Hello, and welcome to the PhotonicsNXT Fall Summit, brought to you by Laser Focus World, BioOptics World, and Industrial Laser Solutions. I'm Justine Murphy, Senior Editor of Laser Focus World. We're thrilled you're able to join us for this day of learning. But before we get started, I'd like to note a few housekeeping items about the platform we're using for today's event. In the product showcase, which is accessible through the main menu of the PhotonicsNXT website, you'll find helpful content such as white papers, case studies, and tutorial videos from the various companies that are supporting today's event. If you have questions about the platform or need help at any point today, go to the Contact Us page to connect with our event staff. They're standing by to help. And we'd like to thank so much all of the Fall Summit's sponsors: Alexa, Focuslight, Gentech EO, Optimax, Palomar Technologies, Teledyne FLIR, and ZMAX. Without their generosity and participation, this event would not have been possible. All of these companies have allowed us to provide this educational summit for you, and they are featured in the product showcase section of the site. We hope you'll take the time to learn a bit more about them and what they offer to the photonics community. Today's agenda kicks off with a session about technology trends in Lidar. Other sessions today will include discussions on AI and camera systems, die bonding for photonics packages, and managing mid-spatial frequency errors on optical surfaces, as well as laser beam measurement, optical design and modeling, and the future of the photonics industry. Today's opening keynote session is by Pierrick Boulet, a senior analyst at Yole Development. In this first session, How Lidar is Powering Automated Driving, Pierrick will explain how the auto industry is using Lidar for ranging and imaging, and also about the components used for light emission and photo detection. And we'd like to also thank our keynote sponsor, Alexa, for supporting today's opening session. Now I'll hand it over to Pierrick Boulet to kick things off. Take it away, Pierrick.
Hello, this is Pierrick Boulet from Yole Development. So today I will talk about the LiDAR and how it is becoming a key sensor in automotive. So first of all, the table of content of my speech, so I will briefly go through the automotive applications and give some segmentation of LiDAR technologies. Then we will see the teardown of the RoboSense M1 that we have opened recently. We will continue on the integration of sensors and on the technology roadmap. And we will finish with a bit of software computing and LiDAR automotive market. So first of all, the automotive application and market. So here you see the evolution of ADAS application evolving from level 0 to level 3. So you see that level 0 is manual driving, with the example of the lane departure warning application that evolved to level 1 application, which correspond to lateral or longitudinal driving task. So lane departure warning evolving toward lane keeping assist and then lane centering assist. Another key application at this level is the adaptive cruise control, evolving toward an adaptive cruise control with stop and go feature. And for level 2 application, which correspond to lateral and longitudinal driving task, the traffic jam application was mostly the addition of a lane centering assist application and the adaptive cruise control. This traffic jam application is expected to evolve toward a traffic jam chauffeur or traffic jam application in a highway for low speed in level 3, so lateral and longitudinal driving task, but without the need of a driver. The driver is not needed to look at the road every time. So this is for driving application. We have the same for parking application with rear view evolving toward a surround view application, then park assist for level 2, and then a remote parking. And you see that for all of these applications evolving from level 0 to level 3, there is an increasing need of sensors and computing. When we look at the technological innovation and how they are implemented into passenger car, it is interesting to split the passenger car volume by the category of vehicles. And here you have the category split by segments. So from the F segment, which is high-end and luxury vehicles, to the A segment with low-end and low-cost vehicles. So you see that globally, the C segment, which correspond to mid-end vehicles, whether it is compact cars or compact SUVs, the average ASP is about $30,000 with an ADAS content about 1%, so equaling about $300. And the volume of this segment in 2020 was 23 million units. In comparison to the F segment, which correspond to luxury vehicle with an average ASP of $100,000, with an ADAS content about 3%, equaling $3,000. But with a volume in 2020, which was below 200,000 units. And it is in this segment where new functionalities using state-of-the-art sensors and computing are implemented. And then for OEMs and Tier 1, there is a strong work for them to deploy the technology. So they have to work on the cost-performance ratio so that they can enable, so that they can implement this innovation into lower segment. So if we talk more specifically on the Lidar topic in ADAS vehicles, so in 2021, Lidar were implemented in 0.1% of total vehicles, so only in the F segment with an ASP of almost $600. In 2026, we estimate that 3% of total vehicles will implement Lidar, so reaching the F segment, with an ASP of $446 for the long-range LiDAR and $120 for the short-range LiDAR. And in 2032, we expect that 9% of total vehicle will embed LiDAR, so equaling to reaching the D segment, with an ASP of $370 for the long-range LiDAR and $100 for the short-range LiDAR. If we look at the LiDAR technology segmentation, so it can be split in two different technologies. So imaging technology, which are mechanical, MEMS, optical phase array, or flash, or ranging technology, so pulse time of flight, or FMCW. You see that today, the majority of LiDAR companies are using pulse time of flight ranging technology. And then in terms of imaging technology, there are multiple options that are taken by LiDAR suppliers. It can be mechanical, MEMS, or flash. And each of the company are at different R&D levels. Some companies like Valeo are already automotive qualified and already selling their LiDAR to OEMs. While some others are still in R&D, and they are currently in the qualification stage or even at early R&D for some other player. FMCW also is getting some traction as we see more and more companies investigating this type of LiDAR. So companies like Silk, Aurora, Mobileye, Eva, for example. But we expect that this type of LiDAR will be integrated in cars not before 2025. In terms of LiDAR technology and more precisely in the light emitter, there are three types of light sources that can be used, so edge emitting laser, VCSEL, or fiber laser. And it is quite interesting to see that the vast majority of players are using edge-emitting laser at 905 nanometer due to the low cost and large availability of this type of component. So this slide shows a non-exhaustive list of players using edge-emitting laser. Regarding VCSELs, here the list of players is much more exhaustive, and a much lower number of players are using VCSEL, mostly for flash LiDAR. And you see that here Valeo appears 2 times. So Valeo is using edge-emitting laser in the Scala that is already embedded in some cars, but is currently developing a flash LiDAR based on VCSEL for short-range application. And for fiber laser, the number of players is even more limited. And they are using this type of light source for a long-range application, mostly at 1550 nanometer. Some others, like Argo, are using fiber laser at 1350 nanometer. But the application is mostly for very long range application, as I was mentioning, and start to be implemented in ADAS cars with Luminar. Others like AI might come in the soon future. In terms of receiver, here again there are 3 types of receiver. APD is by far the preferred type of receiver that is used by LiDAR players. Again, because it is at low cost and largely available from suppliers. SPAD also is gaining traction because it is much more sensitive than APDs. And here it is interesting to see that the player using SPAD are the same player using VCSEL for flash LiDAR. So you find here the combination of flash LiDAR is mostly using VCSELs and SPAD. SIPM is quite new, also gaining traction among the LiDAR supplier with users such as Blickfeld and RoboSense, with the photon detection efficiency currently increasing each year. And this type of photodetectors, SPAD and SIPM, are expected to take some market share to APDs in the soon future. If we look at the teardown of the RoboSense LiDAR, so this is a MEMS-based LiDAR, much more complex than a mechanical LiDAR. And you see here that this type of LiDAR is using 5 modules, and each module is using a combination of a laser diode and 1 SIPM. So in this LiDAR, you have 5 laser diode and 5 SIPM. The MEMS mirror is placed in the middle here, and then you have small mirror to direct the light toward the MEMS module. And it is one of the first automotive grade LiDAR that is using MEMS with Innovis, but it is the first one to use SIPM as a receiver. In terms of integration, here the use case is quite important because it will impact directly the position and the specification of LiDAR. For example, for highway application at high speed, the main need for OEMs is to have a long-range LiDAR placed into a central position. So it could be behind the windshield, on top of the roof, for example. And this type of LiDAR will have, for sure, a long range, but also a narrow field of view. In terms of architecture of LiDAR, it can be mechanical or MEMS at 905, but also 1550 based nanometer LiDAR. But if OEM wants to enable, for example, automated lane change application, they will also need to implement short-range LiDAR on the corner of the vehicle to monitor clearly what is happening at the front and at the rear of the vehicle. And to do that, they will need LiDAR at the corner of the vehicle that will be a short or mid-range LiDAR, but with a very large field of view. It is quite similar in a traffic jam application where the goal is mostly to see at a short range, but also have a very large field of view. In terms of integration, here it is very interesting to monitor the volume of LiDAR. So you all remember the first LiDAR from Velodyne on the roof of the first robotic vehicles. But since then, the volume of LiDAR has been drastically reduced and to be integrated into the grille of the vehicle. This is the case of the Valeo Scala or the Innovis MEMS LiDAR with BMW that will be integrated into the grille. So this is the first step of integration. But to have further integration of LiDAR into headlamps, we expect that the volume of the LiDAR itself has to be reduced again, and a target of 125 cubic centimeter is usually a volume that is that could be targeted by tier 1 and the LiDAR supplier. LiDAR could also be integrated behind the windshield, and here there is still some question if it needs further volume reduction or if a volume of LiDAR used in headlamp could also be used as well. Because for the windshield, there will be some space constraints because there is also the forward ADAS camera that is already integrated. So the volume of the two sensors has to be limited. In terms of position, today a car is able to monitor what is happening on the front and on the rear. So you have radar sensors that are used for sensing on the front and on the rear. So you can find a combination of radar, ultrasonic sensors, camera, and even LiDAR. But on the side of the vehicle, the sensors that are embedded, mostly camera, are only here for viewing application. So the camera are used for parking, but it is mostly for viewing, only for viewing. But if we look on the future, there will be a need to monitor clearly what is happening on the side of the car as well, especially for low-speed application, for city driving application. So create some kind of cocoon, of sensor cocoon around the car. And this is why we also expect that some LiDAR or radar could be integrated into the fender or the B-pillar. At the rear, we see that the range is expected to be increased up to 100 meters with sensors into the bumper, for example, but also on the rear windshield to see what is happening on the rear and have a higher mounting position. This is quite similar on the front with a range that will be extended up to 300 meters, with position still on the grille, but also behind the windshield and on the roof. In terms of integration of sensor, there are new opportunities linked to lighting and also especially to the emergence of electric vehicles. And because electric vehicles do not need a strong cooling, the grille is reduced, giving space to integrate lighting components and also sensors. And it is quite clear on new car that has been released or new prototypes that are being shown by OEMs that lighting is becoming more and more horizontal. so giving space for creating a light signature for OEMs, but also to giving the possibility to integrate sensors into the grille. Because today the grille is lacking of space because there is a need to cool the engine and there is low space available. So using electric vehicles will give more space to integrate sensors. In terms of supply chain analysis, so we have monitored the partnership and design win that has been released publicly. In terms of LiDAR supplier, you see that there are still more than 10 suppliers on the automotive industry. Valeo is by far the leader with almost 30% of the market, followed by RoboSense, and then we have plenty of other LiDAR suppliers. So it shows the diversity of players, but also it shows that the LiDAR industry is still quite young, and some consolidation is expected in the near future. In terms of technology, it is quite different here because you see that the majority of the LiDAR that will be implemented by OEMs will be mechanical LiDAR and based on 905 nanometer component. We see also a strong push for 1550 nanometer component with Luminar, for example, or InnoVision LiDAR. And it is quite similar for the imaging technology with MEMS and flash LiDAR. In terms of technology roadmap, you have here what we see on the evolution. So it started in 2018 with mechanical LiDAR based on edge-emitting laser and LPDs at 905, so between Valeo and Audi. The next generation, we will see different type of LiDAR. So flash LiDAR based on VCSEL and spider array with IBO, edge-emitting laser and SIPN with RoboSense, or edge-emitting laser and MEMS LiDAR with Innoviz. But other type of LiDAR are coming, so based on fiber laser with Luminar and AI, but also flash LiDAR based on VCSEL at 940 nanometer with Valeo. The first FMCW LiDAR is expected not before 2025 with Mobileye and other companies like AIVA, for example. And optical phase array LiDAR will come at the 2030 horizon with players like Raja or Quanergy. In terms of integration, in terms of location, there are plenty of locations. So it was firstly implemented into the grille, but it is evolving into the bumper with Honda, into the roof with NIO or Volvo, into the fender with Lexus, or into the headlamp with Koito and Septon. And for the first time, there is a combination behind the windshield, so a combination of ADAS camera and LiDAR. So and it will be quite interesting to follow if other OEM will follow the same location and combination of sensors behind the windshield. In terms of software and computing and changes, there are two possibilities to do the fusion of sensors. So as of today, the majority of all the OEM are using the late fusion principle, so using an object list coming from the sensor, coming from the radar, the forward camera, and the LiDAR. So it is mostly based on a distributed architecture, where the intelligence is mostly embedded into the sensor, in comparison to early fusion, where it is using raw data coming from the sensor. The intelligence is not in the sensor, but in a domain controller. And the car architecture is evolving from a distributed architecture to a more centralized car architecture with domain controller. And this is where new OEMs could develop their more easily their cars using such architecture. It is quite clear as well when we look at the hardware, where we see the evolution from image signal processor, mostly used with camera that were used only for viewing purpose. And then when we came to sensing, the hardware changed from image signal processor to vision processor. So chip like the Mobileye IQ3, IQ4, IQ5, or from other suppliers such as Toshiba, for example, so that this chip can embed new algorithm to analyze what is in front of the vehicle, detect the object, and create some application. If we look what will happen in the future, so it will evolve from a vision processor to a fusion platform, and this platform will gather multiple processors. So it could be we will find here some processor dedicated to vision application, but also for radar and lidar, and it will all the processing will be done on this type of fusion platform that will embed artificial intelligence algorithm. And that will be the type of platform that will be used in a central architecture. In terms of market forecast, we see globally that the LiDAR market could reach $2.3 billion in 2026, so growing quite rapidly between 21 and 26. But most of the growth is expected after 2023, 2024, with new programs that will be released at this date. So as a key takeaway, you see that the combination of multiple ADAS applications is needed to reach high level of autonomy and requiring an always increasing number of sensors. So more radar, more camera, and more LiDAR, and therefore more computing power to process all of the data. There is still a large diversity of players involved in automotive LiDAR, but mechanical LiDAR at 905 nanometer still dominates the market. The use case has a direct impact on the position and on the specification of the LiDAR, and there is not one LiDAR that fits all of the application. The location of LiDAR is evolving, so position at first into the grille, but now other locations such as the roof, the windshield, the headlamps, the bumper, or the fender are targeted by OEMs. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can contact me at this email address. And thank you again for your attention.